In the world of autism in special education, there is often a lot of emphasis on needing more coping skills, coping with the environment, coping with one's surroundings, coping in the classroom. But what about when there's too much coping, or when coping costs too much? This is Michael from the other side of the desk, and today we're going to be talking about autistic burnout. Stay tuned. So autistic burnout is real, misunderstood, and often invisible. In this episode of The Other Side of the Desk, we unpack what autistic burnout is, how it develops, and why so many autistic people, especially students and educators, reach a breaking point long before anyone notices. This episode is going to center around lived experience, not stereotypes, which is important, and explores what happens when constant masking, unmet support needs, and sensory overload collide. Let's dive into it. So, autistic burnout is a state of chronic physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion caused by prolonged stress and a lack of adequate support or accommodation on the part of educators, on the part of society, the part of really any caregiver or peer. It often includes loss of skills, increased sensory sensitivity, reduced tolerance for social interaction, and difficulty with tasks that were previously manageable. This oftentimes gets mistaken by educators who do not know or by anyone else as laziness, or even as symptoms of a depression, or as lack of resilience. But it's really neither of these things. It's a nervous system under strain. Burnout can look different for everyone, but common experiences include extreme fatigue that doesn't improve with rest, shutdowns or increased meltdowns, difficulty speaking or processing language, loss of motivation or joy in special interests, heightened anxiety or irritability, and increased need for isolation. So many people don't recognize burnout because they've been taught to push through. That comes on the part of both educators and accommodators in the world of autism, and also in terms of people with autism themselves. Before I did extensive research on this topic, I was very much of the mindset of just pushing through these issues, and I didn't even know that these issues had a name. Now that I've studied more and understood more, I have begun to give myself grace in this situation that often comes up in my life. A lot of what I would do when I was younger going through the school system would be what's called masking. Masking is hiding autistic traits in order to fit in. It is one of the biggest contributors to burnout. Examples include forcing eye contact, suppressing stims, mimicking social behavior, and over-complying in school. Or this doesn't end with school, it can happen in work. I've been on both sides of the desk in special education, and I've noticed that I tend to do this in order to fit in order to feel like I belong. Masking may help someone survive short-term, but long-term it comes at a very high cost. So, examples of burnout in the schools and workplaces, it begins early, especially in school environments. Contributing factors can be constant social demands, sensory overload, pressure to perform normally, or inconsistent or denied accommodations. It could be either one of these or a combination of them. It's important to realize that autism, again, is a neurodevelopmental difference. And what we might see are what neurotypical people are people who have been like me, who are not neurotypical, but who've had a tendency to mask throughout their lives, might see this as something we dismiss, but it's actually something that's very real. In adulthood even, burnout is often misdiagnosed or dismissed, leaving autistic adults without support. And again, it's a neurodevelopmental difference, so just like something may trigger someone who's neurotypical, it just is something different that triggers someone who's neurodivergent. For example, certain sounds may not trigger you, may trigger us, and vice versa. So I always emphasize that it's a neurodevelopmental difference, not something that is disordered. So, burnout often gets mistaken for depression. There's an important distinction here. While burnout and depression can overlap, they are not the same. Burnout is often situational, while depression is typically pervasive. Treating burnout like depression without addressing environmental factors often makes things worse, because as people with autism, we're reacting to our situation. And though people with depression are as just as worthy of love, support, and confidence to overcome what they're going through, it's often their perception of the situation. Well, with us, it's actual situational factors that can be addressed. Now, what actually helps with burnout? Now, we've named the problems, but here are some solutions that can help autistic individuals deal with burnout. Recovery isn't quick and it isn't linear. That's the truth. Although helpful supports may include reducing demands, not just self-care, not just making a habit of doing healthy habits, but actually reducing some of the demands that are causing the burnout. Also, sensory regulation. It's important to listen to our bodies, listen to our sensory needs, and for people who are neurotypical, who care for people with autism, to listen to what they're saying about their sensory needs and teaching them to self-advocate in that regard. We need flexible expectations. It is important that we expect only what an autistic person can handle, what's in their zone of proximal development. And this zone of proximal development doesn't just include competencies, rather, it also includes what we're able to do coupled with our sensory needs at the moment. So that's important. And we also have to validate lived experiences and give real accommodations. Really, all the stories of people who have masked forever, like me, who are finally letting themselves be themselves, and also giving accommodations that truly make a difference and are not just for show. Rest is not a reward, it's a requirement. Give yourself grace. Give the people in your lives grace. Because what they do to get that message, to get that work, to get that performance to you and to others takes so much longer to get there and so much more effort to get there than you could ever imagine. So with that, I would like to tell a little bit about my perspective. As someone who has experienced burnout and is preparing to work in education, I would like to talk about how burnout is overlooked in students. A lot of times it's the students who are performing well and look like they're okay, not the ones that are currently freaking out, but hard so to say, but the ones that look like they're managing and doing okay, but are showing subtle signs of burnout. Those are the ones who actually need more attention. So it's often overlooked in students because the squeakiest wheel gets the oil, and oftentimes the students who are on the verge of burnout are not being addressed, either because of staff limitations or because of the limitations of our knowledge about whether a kid is burning out or what's going on. So good behavior can definitely hide distress. It is so important to know that it's not always the visible signs, but it's often what's happening on the inside. And you know what educators can do differently? They can do two things. One, they can be more aware, more cognizant of the different things that autistic people go through and the different signs that they go through, partly by reading up on this, reading from the perspectives of autistic people themselves, and partly by reading scientific literature on it. And second, the first was to be more cognizant of this issue, and the second is just to do one step every day. If you work with students with autism, just do one thing every day to ensure that students are more safe and feel more secure in their school day. It doesn't have to be everything at once. It just has to be a process. And I know we can get there because we are educators who care. All right. So, autistic burnout is not a personal failure. It's a sign that the environment is demanding more than the nervous system can give. Burnout doesn't mean someone can't succeed. It means they need support, not pressure. If you enjoyed this episode and this brief talk about burnout, we can talk about it some more, or we can talk about preventing it, or we can talk about supporting autistic students in the long term. We could also talk about burnout in autistic educators, or rebuilding after burnout. I look forward to talking more about many of these topics because I know how important they are. Please support the channel by liking and subscribing. It is very much appreciated, and it really makes a difference towards my mission to help spread awareness for people with autism using my dual perspective. Don't be afraid to go forth and uphold the dignity and humanity of every unique individual. Thank you so much.